Good morning, Wabash. This week speaking are Professors Michael Abbott and Scott Himsel, Steve Hoffman, and Dean Michael Raiders. After graduating from Wabash in 1985, Michael Abbott studied directing at Columbia University in New York City. He taught at Marquette University for 5 years before returning to Wabash in 1994. He teaches courses in theater, film, and interactive media. Professor Himsel has taught in the political science department and has advised students considering law school at Wabash since 2003. He has also practiced law at Fay Gray Baker Daniels in Indianapolis for over 20 years. Dean Raiders taught and coached 20 years at the high school level before returning to Wabash as Associate Dean in 2004. He was promoted to Dean of Students in 2008. Mr. Hoffman worked as head golf coach, assistant football coach, and currently works as a senior major gifts officer in the Hayes Alumni Center here at Wabash. After Director Tom Runge's approaching retirement, Mr. Hoffman will take over as the Director of Alumni and Parent Relations. In this talk, these men will discuss their roles at Wabash, other members of the class of '85 who hold and have held roles of significance, and how they came to be from their own experience at Wabash as students. Additionally, they will discuss how today's students might find themselves in similar roles in the near future. Starting their talk titled, 85 Ways to Pay It Forward, Dean Raiders.
Good morning, Wabash. Thank you, Ryan, Daniel, and members of the Sphinx Club for the opportunity afforded my classmates and me to speak today. A little bit of background on today's talk. Its genesis began when the club was in a bind for a speaker a few weeks ago. Chapel coordinator Daniel asked me if I had an idea that could fill their need, and since I'm asked about our class and its great involvement with and leadership positions within our college, I thought these smart guys could put something together quickly and effectively. And they agreed, especially if I would begin the talk with an explanation of the circumstances of our invitation, the short time to prepare, the fact that we would do our best to provide something meanwhile or while, though, winging it. But alas, the originally planned speaker was able to perform that day, and we were shoved to the back burner until today. So, the good news is we have had much more time to prepare. The bad news is we may or may not have utilized that time as well as we should have. So, like I would have said a few weeks back as I introduced today's remarks, please don't over-expect, and you may therefore be surprised on the upside with the quality of our talk. This is a strategy a few of us speaking today utilized back in the day with our professors. Please don't over-expect regarding our papers, presentations, comps, etc. One of the purposes of our commentary this morning is to discuss our roles at the college and those of some esteemed fellow members of the class of '85 who hold or have held roles of significance at Wabash. These peers are faculty members, trustees, and holders of prominent positions past and present in the National Association of Wabash Men. I brag on my class a lot. Some would say an awful lot. And I can tell you we talk often about the same question you guys ask us. How is it that this particular cohort of Wabash men and women, as you're about to hear, came to be so interested in, passionate about, and dedicated to this most special liberal arts college for men? What was in the water, or the programming, or the athletic endeavors, and or especially in the classroom experiences from 1981 through '85 that shaped and or hinted at the future abundance of our classmates in positions of leadership at the college? And how might your experiences here in your time at our beloved alma mater predict similar dedication from you loyal sons in the near and distant future? The format for this will be similar in some ways to the Monon Bell Chapel talk or commencement exercises. Each of us will speak in succession and without further introduction, and we have not rehearsed our remarks with each other. The only certain consistency is each man's attempts to answer those questions I just mentioned by sharing a bit of our own stories and that of one other noteworthy classmate. I'll begin. As a fellow history major, I always looked up to Corey Olson, current CIBE Advisory Board member, full Bridget Wabash primary sponsor, and as of last year, member of the Board of Trustees. And when I say I looked up to him, I mean his grades were up here, and mine weren't right there. I promised him I would do this morning as I used to do in class, make him look good. Though back then that was more by my spot on the curve than anything else I may have contributed to the class. A proud Regionite graduate of Crown Point High School, Corey was a reluctant legacy here. He originally, like many of you, did not want any part of this all-male education that his father, Ralph, class of 56, and older brother, Ralph Jr., 83, loved so well. But he visited in the fall of 1980, fell in love with the unique and focused culture, pledged Beta Theta Pi later that school year, pause for the snaps, and matriculated here in the fall of 81. He had aspirations, like me, of becoming a lawyer and jumped onto the conventional track of history and political science courses. He took 0 computer science classes, 0. Yet 3 years after graduation was performing mainframe analytics as an aspiring financier. How did that happen? Well, good old-fashioned hard work and a dose of Wabash swagger. Unemployed at graduation, like this fellow history major. Corey found work at Gainer Bank in the region after convincing an officer there to give him a chance despite no finance courses here at Wabash. How did he get the job, you might ask? Well, it was an entry-level administrative assistant job, showing you can often reach the summits by starting in the trenches. He utilized his research, communication, writing, critical thinking, and people skills to progress quickly up the banking world ladder. He simply outlearned, outstrategized, and certainly outworked his competitors, both in the overall financial market and inside the companies for whom he worked, eventually becoming a chief financial officer, chief operating officer, and president of banks and private equity shops. Accordingly, between the two of us history majors, we've combined to earn millions. I'm glad to see you've got your critical thinking skills in fine tune this morning. He credits this special place, wonderful teachers, challenging curriculum, and powerful pledge class for not only becoming the successful businessman he is, but more importantly to him, the loving and grateful husband and father of 3 girls that he is. And you and we are blessed that he is the most thankful and generous alumnus that he is. I am awed by Corey's kindness, dedication to our college, and to you, her students, and his infectious enthusiasm. He is some little giant. Another some little giant is my very good friend, teammate both in the 80s and now at the college, but seemingly much older classmate due to his becoming a grandfather recently, Steve Hoffman. Steve.
I know he said this, but I have to say it again. Good morning, Wabash. Good morning. Love that. I'm up here for 2 reasons. 1, I attended Wabash College, and 2, I was born in 1962 and was lucky enough to be part of this group and a group of 1985. If you don't know me, my name is Steve Hoffman. You already know I graduated in 1985. As a student, I was a biology major, member of Delta Tau Delta. Good to see that coming back. Thank you. Is that what we're doing now, adults? Re-snapping? I'm not familiar with that. A member of the Sphinx Club, and I played football and baseball. I returned to Wabash in 1991 to coach football and golf, and they've pretty much let me hang around ever since. Tomorrow's my first official day of even trying to partially fill the big shoes left by Tom Runge as Director of Alumni and Parent Relations. And if you don't know, my son Corey is a senior here, and I've been fortunate to have that experience as well. Honor Scholars Weekend, 1981. I was sitting in a room at the Delt House. as an eager yet intimidated prospective student. We all remember those days. The other prospective student in that room was Bill Brady. We started talking about where we were from. Bill told me that he was from Cathedral, and then we discussed football since we were both planning to play football here. My first impression of Bill was so positive because if you have ever met Bill, he is one of the most genuine people that you will ever meet. He quickly became known as Dollar Bill. We were very, very clever back in the early 80s. I don't know who coined that, but I'm guessing, Mike, you might know, it's probably Nick Cirkovich. I mean, he came up with everybody's nicknames, just one after another. And among those of us who knew him as a student, today we still refer to him as Dollar Bill. So a little tip for you students. Nicknames can last the rest of your lives. Be wise. Bill has an alumnus brother, Bob, class of 92 in Indianapolis with Gilead Scientific. Currently, Bill is a senior vice president at the Capital Group in Los Angeles. So why am I telling you about Dollar Bill Brady? Because Bill is very important to you. Bill has been paying it forward, as the title of this talk is, to Wabash students since he graduated. Let me tell you how. Before moving to Los Angeles just a couple of years ago, Bill and his wife Jennifer raised their 4 boys, mostly in Chicago and Indianapolis. Incidentally, his youngest boy is a prospective student, now just on campus for Honor Scholarships weekend. So they lived in Chicago, Indianapolis, and now Los Angeles. So living in a few different cities, it would be easy for Bill to wait for alumni events to come his way. He didn't do that. He found a way to get involved wherever he lived. And I encourage you seniors especially to think about this as well. In Chicago, he organized the golf outing. He stepped up to do that. In Indianapolis, he did a ton of great work recruiting students. And as recently as this past January, he attended the Pie Trip dinner with some of you students in Los Angeles. Bill has also been very, very generous with his giving, and he's given to many areas over the years, including the Annual Fund, the Wabash Club of Chicago Scholarship, the Early Lab Program, the building of the Kappa Sigma House in 2008, and the current fund for student housing. In fact, Bill and his brother Bob named the family room in one of the halls of the new student housing, named it for their parents. A plaque noting this will be installed shortly. And last year, Bill was appointed to the Wabash College Board of Trustees. In short, Bill Brady is there for you students. And I'd like to publicly thank Bill for being all in with Wabash. So what experiences did Bill Brady and I and others have here as students that has fostered our desire to give back and be involved? There are so many answers to this question. I'm going to focus on 2 things, our mentors and athletics. Our class had great, unbelievable mentors in the classes ahead of us, as you students do here as well. Just in football, listen to this list of players with whom were ahead of us on the football team. Pete Metzlars, who held an NFL record and played for 18 years in the NFL. Dr. Chris Carr, a sports psychologist, he's returned to speak to many of you student athletes. Trustee Daryl Johnson, Trustee Bill Wheeler, Trustee Dave Broker, Trustee Pete Wilson, and Trustee Jim Kilbane. Those were in the classes ahead of us, just on the football team. In the Kappa Sigma house, Bill had Mark Maddox, class of 83. Mark later became Indiana's youngest Secretary of State at the age of 32. In my fraternity, in the Dell House, I had Dr. Bill Luckey, who is now president of Lindsey Wilson College in Kentucky. From the staff, Joe Smith in the alumni office was influential to Bill. I had Coach Mark Deal in both football and baseball. From the classrooms to the football field to our fraternities to everywhere in between, and not even knowing it was happening, we observed and learned from these guys ahead of us. Just over 3 years before our class arrived on campus, Wabash was national runner-up in football. Then just our second semester on campus as freshmen, our basketball team won the national championship. We had spirit, we had confidence, we had esprit de corps. And listen to the definition of esprit de corps. Quote, "The common spirit existing in the members of a group and inspiring enthusiasm, devotion, and strong regard for the honor of the group." That was perfect for then and now. Today you would call that, as Dean Raiders mentioned, swagger. Students supported fellow students at everything. Our Sphinx Club was huge. We had some great cheers at football games, some that I will not share here. I will privately if you want to know. Because there are some good ones. Our pep band, and thank you for reviving that this year, all of you involved, was vibrant. At the center of the pep band, and I love this, at the center of the pep band was Dr. Lewis Salter on the drums, then the Wabash College's president. So I think next, Dr. Abbott is going to refer to some of our faculty giants, like Dr. Salter. So thank you very much, Dr. Abbott.
President Salter, he played in the pep band. He attended all the theater productions I was in. He was the nicest man I think I've ever met. And his name is on our diploma. My little micro talk is called A Tale of Two Wallies, or to slightly misquote A Few Good Men, why you need one of us on the wall, but not both of us. I'm going to talk about my classmate, Jim Davlin. Jim recently retired. I'll just mention that again. At the age of 52. He retired as Vice President of Finance and Treasurer of General Motors. Before that, he worked for a few smaller business ventures, Procter & Gamble, John Deere, Eli Lilly. Jim Davlin was a beta. I wrote pause in here just so. He graduated as an econ major. He was Phi Beta Kappa. After Wabash, he got his MBA from the University of Chicago, a small little institution up the road, and later a law degree from Duke University. In 2007, Jim was elected to the Wabash Board of Trustees at the age of 44. That's about as young as you can be to be a Wabash College trustee. Last year, Jim was also elected to the Board of Trustees at Menlo College, which is an interesting place. It's a small liberal arts college in Silicon Valley focused on business education, which tells you something about Jim. He's coming to the end of his business career as a professional, and now he's giving back, sitting on the boards of two institutions, which is a lot of heavy lifting if you're a trustee as involved as Jim is. Jim gave a talk at Wabash a couple of years ago, and he told the students, quote, "Don't be afraid to stop and interrupt me for questions, because if you don't, I'll just keep plowing through. I have a high baud rate." So that occurred to me when he said that, I'll bet you not a single student in that room knew what a baud rate is. But those of us that remember like dialing in on the internet and you get that sound, that was the baud rate. That's like the information coming through the pipe into your system. And having a big, wide baud rate means you're getting a lot of information fast and furious coming into you, right? If you know Jim, you know he comes at you fast and furious, right? He's a very, very stimulating personality. And he's a very active man. And he's also a genuinely enthusiastic lover of Wabash College. I think this now, and I thought it when we were students. Jim Davlin is a classic Wabash man, a true believer, an unapologetic Wabash flag waver. Jim knows this place is special, and he will never forget the impact it made on him. I know for sure that somewhere on Jim's body is a giant red Wabash tattoo, and I don't need to know where that is. I'll tell you another thing about Jim. It's true now, and it was true when we were students. I can't think of a fellow Wabash man less like me. Jim and I didn't hang out back in the day. We weren't buds. He was a Beta, I was a Lambda Chi. Jim was business, I was the arts. Left brain, right brain, conservative, liberal. We still use that L word back then, liberal. Here's a funny thing. Rosenberg just went like this. Here's a funny thing. The most common response I get from students when I mention that I'm an alum is, "You're an alum?" So I'll tell you a few things about me. I said I'm a Lambda Chi, but I lived my last 2 years in an apartment. I've never been a joiner. I'm not nostalgic. Orthodoxy frightens me. Wabash has always leaned towards orthodoxy. Wabash was a formative influence in my life. It changed me forever. But I've never felt entirely comfortable here. This is my home. But I've always felt about Wabash a little like James Joyce thought about Dublin. A deep love, but an ever-present awareness of the outsider. I have never thought that Wabash is the greatest place on earth. I've been to a lot of great places. I've been to a lot of great schools. Wabash is one of them. I've never completely accepted our single-sex approach as the inarguably best way to educate men. In some important ways, it is better. In other ways, it probably isn't. My greatest concern about Wabash is that our choice to be who we are is essentially a defensive posture. We're all male because we always have been, or we don't examine certain things we do because they're untouchable issues, officially classified as traditions. But here's the thing that I want you to know. Wabash has never, in its history, been more open to new ideas than it is now. It has never been less threatened by questions about its philosophy towards education than it is now. Wabash isn't like it was back in '85. Our curriculum isn't, in fact, like it was in '85. We have changed because the college has allowed people like me to change it. And in other essential ways, we have stayed exactly the same because people like Jim Davlin insist that we preserve those core values. What I'm telling you is that you need both Jim and me. Don't be afraid to question the things we never question. Don't construct an image of Wabash that's merely a reflection of your own experience. There are many ways to be a Wabash man. Jim and I are brothers. You can love this place with your own true heart.
Lord, that's a tough act to follow. Wow. Well, this is an unconventional way for a lawyer to start a speech, but I have a confession to make. Gosh, I'm glad that worked because I'm really not very funny. And Michael Abbott is. One of the great joys of my life was watching him in theater. He was absolutely marvelous on the stage. Steve Hoffman is too modest to tell you that he was the quarterback of our fantastic football team. And Mike Rader's a wonderful member of our baseball team, and I'm just very proud to be up here with them today. But back to my confession. In my line of work as a lawyer, I try to be detached, unbiased in my view of life. I cannot do that about Wabash College. It is impossible for me. And so my comments will sound a bit different than Professor Abbott's, but also a bit the same, I think, by the time I'm done. I loved being a student here. I really loved it. I'm one of those. I loved it so much, I think, because professors and students took each other seriously. And I loved it because we cared deeply, not just about the issues we debated, but about the people debating them. It made our debates exciting and fun, but also humane. I was in a great place to observe this because I got to be a political science major and a history minor. It was Christmas morning every day for me here. And my students know this. I can't get enough of political debate. And we were here during the Reagan years. There was a lot to disagree about. The debate was great because, as my friends have already told you, we had giants on the faculty to challenge us. For example, in poli-sci, we had Melissa Butler, the first woman tenured at Wabash, and she pushed students hard. We had David Hadley, an expert professor and a participant in politics. We had Phil Mikesell, who was annoying. He was annoying because he didn't just critique your answers, he critiqued your questions. He wouldn't even let you get to the question mark. And he made us so much better. And finally, my advisor, we had a lawyer named Ed McLean, better known to students as Fast Eddie. There was a reason for the nickname. He could dissect and destroy your arguments so fast and turn you around and make you you didn't even realize you were making an argument opposite to where you started. But he was also incredibly humane to students. The debate was also great because we had superb competition. You've already seen some of it. You've heard about more. But let me mention two other people I competed against. One was Tom Caney, who is now Associate Dean of Johns Hopkins Medical School, and Chris Coble, who is now Vice President of Religion at Lilly Endowment. The greatest difficulty we had in those debates is when our professors forced us to make arguments we did not agree with. Why do that? Well, as another faculty giant of our era, Bill Plaker, used to say all the time, you've got to learn how to think all the way around a problem. So, when Dr. McLean retired in 2003, I jumped at the chance to come back here, to be part of something that had been magical for me as a student when it was at its best. And I'm happy to say I found it to be just as magical as a faculty member. My students work so hard, just ask them. And they do so well. And I delight in having them make arguments they disagree with about our vital civil rights and civil liberties. Now more than ever, we have to relearn how to see both sides of an argument. Our faculty today makes that happen. The faculty today has more giants than I have time to list, and you just heard from one of them in Mike Abbott. And what's really cool, as my friends have said, is that even our classmates who aren't on campus every day still help out in important ways. I've already mentioned Tom Caney and Chris Coble. They've both been back on campus to enrich the lives of our students. But I have one more I want to focus upon, and that's Greg Estelle. Greg's a Lambda Chi. He was I don't know where this comes from. Anyway, he was this wonderful person. He was Mike Abbott's fraternity brother, a wonderful fellow, a good man. But what impressed me most is what he did after. Because Greg has been on the board and the president of the board of our National Association of Wabash Men at critical times, doing very important things for our students. Near and dear to my heart, he was extremely supportive as we completely retooled our pre-law program, and we see the fruits of that especially in this year's amazing senior class. As a fraternity man of great intelligence and remarkable business savvy, of just good sense, Greg was a valuable player in the aftermath of some difficult student discipline situations we had in our Greek life in the past. And Greg was also part of one of the most important initiatives, although not trumpeted often enough, of our alumni, which is to find a way to be more intentional and more inclusive in our outreach to gay students at Wabash. I want to add this, and then the dean will wrap up for us. We don't know when your opportunities will come to serve Wabash after you graduate. None of us can know that yet. But those opportunities will come. And we urge you to seize them and to enjoy once more the magic this place can create when it's at its best. You'll forgive me, I'm a 4-year Glee Club member. I'm one of those, too. In our alma mater, we sing, "Give us this joy forever and keep our faith sublime." That promise came true for us and for many others in our class. It can come true for you, too.
A few off-script comments. One, quick Dr. Michael story. He was my advisor when I first came to Wabash. First time I met him, I walked into our freshman Saturday, back in our time it was freshman Friday, our first freshman Friday meeting. I walk in, he says, how are you? How you doing? I said, good. He said, well. I said, well, what? And thus began our relationship. Dr. Himsel mentioned Melissa Butler, also Fran Hollett, both of those stalwart ladies of Wabash College, honorary members of our class. And we could not be more proud of them and their accomplishments, and especially of their wisdom, their critical thinking skills in choosing the class of '85 to join. One other element for all of you and all of you watching online. We can only talk about so many of our classmates and the stalwarts and the trustees, the high profile. Let me give you an example just this week, just 2 days ago, of how we can always be giving back. One of my roommates here, my best friend here, Greg Zorich, class of '85, played football, member of TEAC. Thank you. There you go. He was here this week. It's his spring break. He's got a son who's a junior, and he brought not only his son to look at the college, but 4 of his high school teammates. So 5 young men coming to look at Wabash. Now consider this, and in fact, I had this very conversation when I was a high school teacher and coach. I had this very conversation with President Ford in regard to giving. Let's use my buddy Z's example this week. On average, let's say it's $20,000, $25,000 a year a young man pays to come here. If those 5 guys come, Greg Zorich has donated over $100,000 to the college annually. He doesn't have the ability to write the check that some of the financiers and millionaires can write. But that kind of a check, in terms of continuing the legacy of Wabash men, is absolutely critical. And frankly, again, it took President Ford telling me that about 10 years into my career as a high school teacher to fully understand that. So that's another way that you can give back and pay it forward to the college. So, from all of these comments, back to the script, what have you learned? What is it about our class and our classmates that makes ours a special class with a very special bond with our alma mater? You've heard many similar yet different answers this morning. My challenge to you is to find that answer or that story, that example or 85er role model that most motivates you. To a man, we can't perfectly articulate what program or course, experience or mentor we had that was the reason, the key to our undying love for this great and special place and our great and special friends and class. I think the thread through commentary this morning is that we are, to a man, so appreciative of the unique and tremendous education in and out of the classroom we received here. And we continue to do anything we can to show our gratitude and pay it forward, while at the same time recognizing we simply can never give as much as we've received. We have all, as I hope you have, found there is some kind of greatness by osmosis here. whereby the unbelievable smarts and qualities of your peers, professors, and other professionals with whom you engage can't help but rub off on you. If you fully engage and immerse yourself in Wabash, as each of us certainly did. My classmates and I, again, like I hope is the case with all of you, were infused with the spirit of the Little Giants. A Wabash always fights, always means always approach to college and life overall. I've seen those qualities in so many of you, individually and collectively, and I know I speak for these fine gentlemen, those men and women we've featured this morning, and our classmates and mentors when I tell you how proud, to echo Dr. Abbott's point, how proud we are of the state of the college, the quality of the student body, and the many ways you are educated to live our mission and gentleman's rule both now and in your bright futures. We wish you well. Hope you have as much fun and great experiences throughout your lifetimes with your classmates as we certainly have with ours, and especially that you look to serve future generations of Wabash men with as much passion as we have and do. I look forward to watching a 2037 chapel talk when a group of you 16ers are blessed to do what we've been able to do, to share that when college days are past, as long as our lives shall last, our greatest joy will not only be to shout the chorus, but to share an undying devotion to Wabash's most honored name. Thank you, Wabash.